Well, now you got into this mess by going down a waterfall. Now, how would you suppose we can get them out of there?
By going up the waterfall?
That's right. Anything's possible in Disneyland.
Welcome, friends, and thank you for joining us on this episode of Up the Waterfall with your hosts, Zanna and Scott Otis.
Howdy.
Here we take a nostalgic journey up the waterfall of Disney parks, movies, books, and more, with a present-day point of view. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy your visit up the waterfall. And this week, for episode 34, we have a live studio audience with us. We're practicing for our live show and all the hecklers that will come with it. But yes, these are our children who are hanging out. This is a family production here, as
Indeed.
always. Anyway, episode 34, we're going to jump right in to what I'm calling, and others have called, the second golden age of Disney animation.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Or the Renaissance period.
Yes.
As it is more commonly known, I believe. And
Works.
The inspiration for this episode, if you've been following along, I don't know, probably not everyone follows me on Facebook, but I think that's where I mostly posted about this. But we were up in the mountains of Tennessee, which is why we are pushing back our live show. But we kept all of our episodes, on schedule. So
That's right.
but while we were up there, I got an invitation to be on a Zoom call for the press junket, if you will, for the new Howard documentary that Don Hahn is coming out with.
Oh my gosh, I'm looking so forward to that.
Yes. So as sort of a segue into that coming out, because I'm going to have an article and review on Zannaland.com about it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, let's hope that we can get Don Hahn to appear on this episode with us.
that would
Not
be
this
awesome.
episode, but this show, this podcast
That would be fantastic.
with us. That would be fun. He's a great guy.
Yeah. Indeed. he really is.
So anyway, I wanted to rewatch Waking Sleeping Beauty before I saw Howard. I have a screening version of the movie to see, which I'm going to see very soon before it comes out on August 7th. So this is coming out on the 5th. Howard comes out on the 7th. So we're just lining everything up. We definitely would advise you to rewatch or watch, if you haven't ever seen Waking Sleeping Beauty before.
Yeah, and as we'll probably touch upon, there's some fantastic Howard Ashman footage in this movie as well.
Exactly. So one of the things Don said on this interview call was that it's not necessarily a sequel per se to Waking Sleeping Beauty, but it's kind of like an enhancement. It really just like explores that aspect of that time frame with Howard Ashman. But getting back to the original topic at hand, there was a sort of dark time in Disney animation before this Renaissance, as is what happens, the dark ages before the Renaissance.
Yeah.
And that was right around the time that the Black Cauldron had been worked on for very long and finally came out, and it was not a big hit.
It was the opposite of that. It was a stinker, actually. It pushed the envelope as far as technology was concerned for animated films, but the story just really didn't translate very well.
It's been a long time since
so
I've seen it, but I mean, it was also rated PG.
I believe so, yes.
Which was, virtually unheard of for a Disney animated feature.
It was just so incredibly dark. Very
dark, and that was the edited version. Like, it was even worse. Before they cut some stuff out.
I mean, the Horn King and a bunch of creepy, ghouly skeletons going after our heroes.
But the clips I've seen of it in recent times, it is very pretty to look at. It's like it is great technological advancements in animation. It was just the wrong time, I believe,
it was,
for it to come out.
It was just not really a big
a little
fun
reworking.
Family romp of Disney animation. So.
And in fact, they mention in Waking Sleeping Beauty that it was actually beat in the box office by the Care Bears movie.
Whoops.
It's a sad statement. So it was also a strange time this is why I love Waking Sleeping Beauty, because I love movies that are documentaries that are just a behind the scenes kind of look. And this is a lot of not found footage, but one of the animators recorded it just as like a fun home video.
Yeah, it was a Randy Cartwright. It was a lot of this was kind of revolved around just some home movies. He had just gotten himself a new camera, and he really was just wanting to test it out. He brought it to the studios, and he actually illegally filmed, because it was kind of against company policy to film while all that behind the scenes footage is there. And so he was often approached by security to turn that thing off. And what's funny is literally the very first scene that he shot,
I was just going to mention that.
The head of the studio, or actually of the company, Ron Miller, Walt Disney's son-in-law, comes out and says, "What are you doing?"
And he was great on film. He didn't say like, "Hey, shut this off."
So he actually did a total of 3 of these in the years 1980, 1983, and then the third one was literally 10 years to the day after the first one in 1990. Where he was basically just giving a tour of the animation studios at the time. And so there's just like a who's who of animators, if you will, that were on film there, including, actually it was John Lasseter, who was the cameraman operator.
Yes.
They saw Tim Burton.
Yeah, that was funny.
Very young Tim Burton.
Who looked very Tim Burton-like.
Oh yeah, he was kind of, I couldn't tell if he was just really upset or if he was just kind of hamming it up for the people. And then of course, Glenn Keane and
Ron Clements, John Musker.
Oh yeah. Kirk
so
Wise
it was an interesting time in that all of these new names and faces, kind of unknown names, I guess, at the time, were just starting out and wanted to prove themselves and create, amazing new animation.
They were straight out of CalArts. Yeah.
But at the same time, there were some of the original 9 old men still hanging out there in
Eric
their little
Larson,
cardigans.
Ollie Johnston, Frank Thomas, and they were basically there kind of mentoring all of these young animators, and all of these young animators were just so eager to work with them because these are the 9 old men who worked with Walt himself on creating the classics, all the way from Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs and Fantasia, Cinderella, Peter Pan, and all that. So yeah, they were just wanting to learn. So
that was one aspect of the movie which I love, was just the behind the scenes, fly on the wall, what it was like. Sort of, not everything, of course, but to be in that animation studio at that time. But then as the movie progresses, of course, we then see that there's a lot of other things going on in the Walt Disney Company at that time. And there was kind of a shakeup. Roy E. Disney stepped down from the board.
Yeah, there were a couple of actually takeover attempts by some corporate raiders who were just kind of wanting, since Disney had been so down at the time, their stock prices were so depressed that a couple of corporate raiders, including Saul Steinberg and Irwin Jacobs, were basically tried to buy the company up, and they literally, if they had succeeded, would have sold the company for parts. And maybe the theme parks would have maybe gone to Six Flags, and maybe would have ended the animation studios. Who knows?
Can you imagine? That would have just been crazy.
And so, essentially, on the first one, Disney essentially paid Saul Steinberg greenmail, which is basically just extra money just for him to go
buy
away.
His shares. Yeah.
Which essentially saved the company, and that was 1984, and that's when Roy E. Disney basically brought in Michael Eisner and Frank Wells from Paramount and Warner Brothers Studios, respectively, to run the company.
Yeah.
And so the whole movie is literally what happened in that 10-year span from 1984 when they were brought in to 1994, right, with the success of The Lion King.
Yes, and it's a very interesting tale.
Oh yeah.
I'd certainly known before this the Jeffrey Katzenberg exit from the company,
famous, yes.
So many people knew that was going on right before Pocahontas came out, I believe.
Yep.
But it was interesting to see when he came into the picture and how he really tried, it seemed, after he kind of got his footing, make things work and to make a success of the animation
he
team.
was a great marketing man. He, basically, he was just he knew all the people within the Hollywood and all of them, basically to get the word out to, and he was just a great promoter of these films as they came out. And,
didn't start out on the best foot.
Right.
With his 6 a.m. meetings and 8 a.m. Sunday morning meetings.
Yeah, his schedule didn't quite mesh well with the animators and all them. But what was interesting is, Roy, as I had mentioned, Roy brought in Michael Eisner and Frank Wells. And, and kind of the one caveat was that since he knew the company and he knew animation, and that was, the lifeblood of this whole company, he just wanted to run it.
Right. He
wanted to essentially salvage it from kind of the downstate, which really hadn't had a hit since, I believe, The Jungle Book, right after Walt's passing. So he kind of wanted to, save it. And so Michael Eisner gave it to him. But then Michael Eisner brought in Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he didn't want Jeffrey Katzenberg to step on his toes, so he basically told him, animation is yours.
Yeah.
So there was kind of a clash just right there from the beginning. Like, is it Roy or is it Jeffrey Katzenberg? Who's in the head spot at animation?
And based on what the movie is telling us, it's kind of surprising that they lasted as long as they did working together. But I guess the work that came out spoke for itself. Right.
And then shortly after that, Roy Disney brought in Peter Schneider. Kind of as an assistant to him to be the president of the animation studio. So there are all these egos, if you will, kind of there. I wouldn't say Peter Schneider was a big ego. He was willing to.
He was just a different way of doing things.
Right.
It seemed very unique, and I think he challenged them to think outside of the box. Waking Sleeping Beauty was produced by Peter Schneider.
Yeah, that's right. Don Hahn and Peter Schneider, right.
It's funny to see that despite Peter being one of the producers on it, there's, a scene of all of the caricatures that people were making of him when he first came on board.
I think he was the most caricatured kind of head of the studio, and he has a very interesting face. And so, because I think initially he kind of clashed with the animators. They didn't like him to begin with. So they took it out on him by caricaturing him, and they showed all of those. But so then they quickly gelled.
Another reason why I love these kind of movies, because especially in the Disney world, and this is one of the things I brought up to Don on our call, was that if something is distributed basically by Disney, you kind of worry, is this going to be sugar-coated, not the real story? But I feel like Waking Sleeping Beauty and Howard seems to definitely be as much of the real story as can be told.
Yeah, this was not whitewashed in any way. It's kind of like a warts and all kind of a deal. And what was amazing is that they were able to bring back Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Roy E. Disney. Actually, Roy was still with the company at the time that the movie was made. But they brought back all of these personalities, and they all spoke very frankly about what happened. Even times when they, especially like Jeffrey Katzenberg, when he didn't necessarily look to be the best, where it kind of represented him in a negative light. He was very happy and willing to share all of those memories that took place. And so that was awesome. And additionally, what I was going to say was, Peter Schneider and Don Hahn, who essentially produced this film, they were there.
Right.
So they had firsthand knowledge of all of these things because they were there.
Yeah. And
so it's a very authentic film.
And it really is such a great way to see the other, because as, Disney fans growing up, Little Mermaid came out in, 89?
89, right.
It was a long time ago now. And, I certainly wasn't as educated on Disney history as I am now. I'm sure you were back then. But I love the fact that this exists so we can see kind of how the lightning was captured in the bottle, basically.
Yeah, because they basically kind of go through this 10-year span from 1984 to 94, and there were 10 movies that actually came out in that span. And it was pretty much one every year. I think there were 2 in 1988 and none in 1986 at the time. But it kind of shows you what all happened from the time that Black Cauldron came out, so The Great Mouse Detective, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Oliver and Company, and then leading into the huge hit, The Little Mermaid. Right. And actually, I would say Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when that came out, that was also a gigantic hit. That it was the most expensive movie ever made at the time, but it did bonkers business. Yeah. And so it was kind of like, oh, maybe we've got something here. And then when Little Mermaid came out, they were like, wow, okay, we're kind of running on all cylinders. You know, they did have The Rescuers Down Under, which didn't quite hit.
Still haven't seen that since our episode.
It's spectacular.
I'll watch it.
But then Beauty and the Beast came out, and that set all kinds of box office records, and so they're just on top of the world. Aladdin came out, and it beat that. And then, The Lion King, which did absolute bonkers, crazy, nutty, $300+ million business, which, for 1994 was phenomenal.
Right. And what's fun to see or crazy to see is this was when Jeffrey Katzenberg made his statement that there was going to be a new animated feature every year.
Yeah.
There was some kind of, whether Roy said that or Jeffrey said that, but it was said either way. And so it's kind of crazy to think, and there was, discussion of how the animators were working such late hours, and they were getting tendinitis and carpal tunnel syndrome and all of this stuff just to make these things happen. Yeah,
I mean, it was such an interesting dynamic because, first off, it started with this ragtag bunch of animators straight out of CalArts, working with the old timers, like I mentioned, and then they start getting a hit after hit, but they were starting to work all of these unreasonable hours, like you were saying, like 90-hour weeks, where it was really affecting like their families, not seeing their kids or their spouses.
But then they got raises.
They got agents because of, just the success. And so it was kind of like a nonstop runaway locomotive. They kind of equated it to that. They didn't want to get off of the train. They still wanted to keep going because it was such a phenomenal business. But then it kind of went off the rails towards literally right around when The Lion King came out, which you would think was the hugest hit, and as I said, it was. But that's kind of when a lot of things went haywire. And I was going to say, one of the interesting ways that Don Hahn presented this film is he literally started the movie with The Lion King. They showed that Elton John footage of him kind of singing the song, and then he actually filmed a lot of the executives kind of thanking the animators and all of that, and he started the film with this, showing Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Roy E. Disney kind of thanking the animators for their work. And so you're thinking, okay, wow, this is amazing. This is a huge success. And then as it showed, and then it goes back to the 1984, and it progresses all the way to that time. And it shows you kind of how things were kind of getting off the rails there. And then they show that exact same footage, and it means something completely different the second time you see it, because now you're invested in these characters and you see all of the stuff that they were going through.
Right.
And, it's quite, it has a different thing. Like, I believe Michael Eisner's, literally a couple of weeks after he gave that thank you is when he had his quadruple bypass.
Yeah.
The heart attack, and that led to that. This was also right after the time when Frank Wells tragically passed away in a helicopter accident in northern Nevada. And then right after that is when that whole Jeffrey Katzenberg exit. So that kind of that trifecta of kind of chaos kind of derailed that whole nonstop steam locomotive.
And of course, in the beginning of all of that, Howard Ashman had become such an amazing success, and it was just like a perfect fit. The songs were just flowing, him coming up with the ideas and flipping things on their head, basically, as far as how the musicals would come out and things like that, how they would mesh together.
Yeah.
And then he is diagnosed with AIDS,
Mm-hmm.
HIV, and passes away.
Yeah, and the footage that they have of Howard Ashman in this film really makes me want to see, the movie Howard that's coming out,
We should
because
watch it
it's
right after
a
this.
phenomenal kind of a preview of that. But a lot of the people behind the scenes, they kind of equated Howard Ashman as kind of like the second coming of Walt Disney, which is, that's quite praise, because he wasn't just the lyricist of those three movies, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin. Aladdin was kind of his idea. I mean, they had the idea to kind of go with that story, but a lot of the story elements, were his, and also with the kind of how the story developed with The Little Mermaid as well. It was his idea to make the crab
Jamaican.
Jamaican, yeah.
Yeah,
and
because he would have these visions of like a complete story, which the music and the songs would then flow out of.
Yeah.
It wasn't just, here's a song, and then we'll move on to the next part of the movie.
Exactly.
It all was connected.
Yeah,
it really changed the way.
I would say that the whole idea of the animated film being kind of like a musical, kind of a musical treatment, or the way it is now a musical, that was essentially his idea.
Yeah.
Animation today is what it is because of Howard Ashman.
I agree.
And so and there's even kind of like I think they showed a segment of this in the film, and there's an extended thing of that in one of the deleted scenes, is him kind of going through all of musical theater and tying animation to musical theater, and how the songs in animation are just like musical theater, advancing the story, telling the story of the characters through song. That it's not just, okay, now we're going to take a break and sing a song. No, it advanced the story. It kind of was a character development.
Exactly. Don actually said that. I keep talking about this call, but it really was amazing to hear him speak and answer all these questions. But that was one of the things he said on the call, was that during The Little Mermaid, 30 seconds before, Ariel doesn't know who Ursula is. She's never even met her before. And then at the end of the song, she's signing her voice away to her. And just the song itself advanced the story.
That's right.
That much. So
yeah, and there's a phenomenal sequence also, I believe it's one of the deleted scenes as well, where he's kind of coaching Jodie Benson into singing the Part of Your World song. And I think there's like an extended 6 or 8 minute sequence of them just kind of going over it together, him coaching her on how she should be singing each thing, because every direction that he gave was very specific. There was no he wasn't wishy-washy about it.
He wasn't like, just sing it how you feel it. It was
and
specific.
Seeing that whole process of just the two of them kind of going, he even got to the point, okay, let's lower the lights so that you can kind of, because this is the part of your world where she's in her cave, singing about how she just wants to be
where the people are.
Where the people are, yeah. and it's just amazing. It gave me goosebumps, and it really is making me looking forward to this upcoming film, Howard.
On Disney Plus, August 7th.
Oh, that's right. But go ahead.
No, I think it's just, as a Disney fan, and I've spoken to a few people since the call that I had, and I was surprised at how many people still haven't seen Waking Sleeping Beauty. So that's part of why I wanted to do this, because hopefully this inspires someone to watch it. Because if you are a fan, even just a casual fan, I think learning the stories behind how these musicals and animation came to be. I mean, this is just one aspect that we're talking about, but there's so many other things that need to come together. And one of the things that they said throughout the film was that animation at that point was never a moneymaker. It was just...
I mean, because really right around, I'd say the late 50s, Walt's focus was, okay, he kind of was like, okay, animation's doing its thing, we'll let that go. And he personally became interested in live action films, television, Disneyland, kind of doing the city of the future with Epcot Center. So, he basically said, okay, we'll let animation do its own thing, of course, with people taking over it. but his interest had moved on.
Yeah.
And then right after his death, people just didn't know what to do, and so that's when the animation really took a tumble. And so they were just kind of pushing out film after film that just wasn't quite there.
Yeah.
And so it's just amazing that it really was a renaissance where they came back with this.
And I think, Roy E. Disney certainly didn't want to let that legacy of the company die. So I think it's great that he stepped in and said, hey, this needs to happen and keep happening. But I think also an important part was that the animators that weren't happy with how things were going, like the Don Bluths of the
that's right,
the company, went off to do their own thing. And, we got An American Tail, and
which
then
was a
Steven
huge
Spielberg
success,
jumped in and did A Land Before Time and all that stuff. And I think that pushed Disney to say, hey, wait, we don't have to keep doing the same thing. We can
because
do
all
more.
the way up until then, Disney dominated animation.
Yeah.
And now An American Tail, I think it was 1986, came out, and it was the biggest hit ever. And wait, that's not a Disney film. We're supposed to be on top of this. And so that kind of pushed them into these new things. And so when Oliver and Company came out, it did phenomenal business. I think somewhere in the realm of $58 million. This is $1988, so that was kind of unheard of at the time. And that one didn't really break too many, technological.
No, I wasn't a fan of the animation style in that.
Right.
Personally.
I mean, it was very hand-drawn. But then that same year, that's when Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out, which, that's where they were blending live action with animation. And in combining more than just the Disney cartoons, but,
I
a
loved
lot
that
of the classic
of
Warner Brothers cartoons, as well as cartoons from, everywhere else.
Yeah.
And it was, as I said, that was just a gigantic hit, and that just kind of led into, then The Little Mermaid that came out in the following year, and just kind of set the record, and then each film did kind of more beyond that, with the exception of Rescuers Down Under.
That is odd. I guess, was that like a different team on that one or something? Was there singing in that one? I still haven't seen it.
No, that was not a musical.
See? That's why.
But it had phenomenal animation. Just, Glenn Keane kind of took over that whole eagle thing, who has very complicated Australian names, so I'm not even going to try to remember what that was. But just the footage of the eagle with the boy flying. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that film, and I'm going to get you to see that.
Okay, I'll watch it, and we'll do a whole episode on it.
Can we?
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
I wish we could do one on things that we haven't seen, but you've seen everything, so that would be just stuff I haven't seen, which wouldn't be as much fun.
That's okay. One of the other aspects of this film, and the fact that it's not dry at all, is there are no talking heads.
Right.
Don Hahn made sure, since they kind of were there, they found all of this amazing footage of, as I mentioned, Howard Ashman kind of giving that lecture, just them in the kind of like the storyboarding rooms, kind of going through storyboards and all of this. And so while people are talking, it's still showing live action of all of the amazing things happening in the studios. And so
and then there's voiceovers.
Yes.
As well. So it's not just all old footage, it's commentary.
Yes, and
you're not
anytime
staring at somebody.
Anytime it shows, or you hear a person talking but you don't see them, there's a little bubble that comes up that shows you who's talking.
Exactly. It's very well done, and that's how
extreme.
Howard is as well. There's no talking heads in that. It's fly on the wall, found footage. He found a lot of amazing stuff, so I'm sure you're going to love it.
Actually, I just remembered, they one of the amazing things that they found, sorry, I get a little excited, was right after they had, the executives had changed the name of Basil on Baker Street to the Great Mouse Detective, the animators were livid about this because
they were being controlled by marketing and not their creative.
And so they one of the animators kind of secretly put forth a memo kind of renaming all of the classics, like Girl with See-Through Shoes, or 7 Men in a Forest with a Girl, or something like that. Just kind of like stupid
memes from the 80s.
Exactly. And actually, what's interesting is that Jeopardy had a category, based on that memo, and they actually found that footage from an old Jeopardy show where they kind of went through a lot of the titles of animated films, and they were very happy when they found that footage.
It is funny that that they decided to use that footage. It was a crazy time.
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, I guess back at that time, nowadays, when an animated film changes a title, nobody hears about it, nobody cares.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't make huge news like it did then.
I guess I'm too entrenched in the Disney community, I guess, to know. But like, Tangled had quite a few names.
That's true.
Frozen had quite a few names.
Actually, The Lion King was King of the Jungle at one point.
Yeah.
I would just say, as you mentioned, this movie, Waking Sleeping Beauty, is on Disney Plus, and it
does it have extras and bonus features on Disney
it's
Plus?
about 87 minutes long. Interestingly, right about the same length as an animated feature. On Disney Plus, there are 3 deleted scenes. I would recommend the DVD or Blu-ray because they have so much more. They have a total of 6 deleted scenes on here, 4 of which are about Howard Ashman.
Mm.
But there's also a director's commentary, which I listened to with Don Hahn, the director, and as also his co-producer Peter Schneider, where they essentially talk about everything that's going on. But in addition, during that director's commentary, they have additional commentary from others that they throw in there that just kind of didn't make it into the film. So just watching the director's commentary is phenomenal as well. I cannot recommend this highly enough.
So after you finish listening to this episode or watching, head to Disney Plus or order from wherever you get your DVDs and watch this if you haven't.
I would have thought that everyone would have already had this.
Well,
and actually, the DVD, I wanted to show this because it comes with this commemorative lithograph of, this was in the film, depicting Howard Ashman eviscerating Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise after a especially harsh meeting.
That's pretty funny. See, that's why I love all of these behind. I keep saying it, but
because
seeing stuff
Kirk
like this,
Wise, the guy who's kind of Charjo Crisp, he's the one that actually drew this after an especially tense meeting with Howard Ashman. So yeah, a lot of fun characters.
Don Hahn needs to do the definitive Walt Disney biography film.
Well, I mean, he's already he's doing Howard as well, and he just did another documentary about the archives as well for D23.
Yes.
So he's kind of like the go-to guy now.
He's got so much going on, but I have been saying for eons that I want an accurate story. Like, Saving Mr. Banks was not true to what actually happened, and that was just one moment in
and that's
history.
Certainly not a documentary.
No, not in any way. But and there's so many like small independent films that have attempted to do the Walt Disney story, but I want more, and I want it to be done well and
I would trust him
historically
to do
accurate.
That.
With Walt smoking and everything, I'm okay with it.
Well, I mean, it's how Walt was. So yeah.
So again, we urge you, if you have not seen it, to watch Waking Sleeping Beauty, especially before seeing Howard coming out August 7th.
Just to see how these characters were. I mean, just, as I mentioned, Michael Eisner, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Roy E. Disney, just kind of showing all of the personalities between all of them. It's so fascinating.
It really is. And imagine how much more was on the cutting room floor.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have seen this, or you watch this after watching our episode or listening to our episode, drop us a comment and let us know what your favorite part of the film was and what you learned that you didn't know.
I learned so much.
I know. I learned a lot too, because
I had seen
it before.
Anything. And I, having watched it again, and I guess I knew these characters even a little bit more than I had last time I'd seen it. I learned so much more. I really just want to see it again. I cannot see it enough. It's really great.
Heading to our trivia corner before we say goodbye
that's right.
episode, we had someone email us, Ellen D.
Yay.
at just Ellen, I guess, on Twitter. A lovely person
Indeed.
who's been listening to our
One
podcast.
of our
We thank
faithful
you
listeners.
from the bottom of our hearts for listening and commenting on Twitter and sending in a trivia thing. Thank
Which
you.
is awesome, yeah.
So your question was, what were
yeah,
the different lands that the Haunted Mansion or Haunted
because
Mansion
they
type
are all in
attraction
different
was in.
lands. And I was including the Phantom Manor in Disneyland Paris, as
Yes.
well as Mystic Manor from Hong Kong Disneyland. All of the
Correct.
Haunted Mansions and those two other ones are all in different lands.
Yes.
And
So Ellen got them all right.
yeah,
I'll
the
read them off.
original is
Okay,
you
you know them off the top of your head. So.
I do. The original Haunted Mansion in Disneyland is in New Orleans Square, of course, famously. And then, of course, Magic Kingdoms is in a very unique land exclusive to Magic Kingdom, Liberty Square. Why don't you take over for me?
Oh,
The next
okay.
one is Tokyo Disneyland.
Tokyo Disneyland is in Fantasyland.
Fantasyland.
Crazy.
What's funny about that is funny. I remember being in line for Dumbo, the Flying Elephants, there, and literally right next door is the Haunted Mansion.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm still very. I have not researched a lot
Yeah, don't.
of Tokyo Disneyland. Like things have come across, my vision, but so I don't know much about it. So
Good.
I had no idea.
And then, of course, next is Disneyland Paris. And where can that be found? The Phantom Manor.
That's in Frontierland.
Wait, what?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
I know about because
Yeah.
Sophia went there.
Yeah, that's right across the street from Big Thunder Mountain. And then, of course, the new one, Mystic Manor in Hong Kong Disneyland, can be
Yes.
found.
At Mystic Point.
Yeah, that's right. One of their 3 new lands that they had built there.
I don't know what else is at Mystic Point,
Not
but I'll
much.
find out when I go.
Not much.
Okay.
Some photo opportunities, and the train goes by there.
That's fun. So thank you again to Ellen for writing in. Your prize is a job well done.
Yay.
We'll have prizes in the future, perhaps, but
I do have a trivia question.
do you?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Okay. From the movie Waking Sleeping Beauty, as we've mentioned, it features the songwriting and duo of Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. And as we all know, Alan Menken, I believe,
We didn't
is
even
now-
talk about him this whole episode.
Oh, I
That's
know.
crazy. He's great. We love him.
He is phenomenal. But he was Howard's musical partner. And he himself has won a total of 8 Academy Awards. But how many has Howard Ashman won? Because it's not the same amount. And what were they for?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
While you think of that, I forgot one thing I wanted to mention because
What?
our perfect storm of promoting Don Hahn and Howard Ashman and now Alan Menken, the Walt Disney Family Museum is doing a virtual fundraiser.
Oh my gosh, they're awesome, by the way.
They are. And they're presenting an evening with Alan Menken Thursday, which is tomorrow, August 6th at 5 p.m. Pacific. There's you can just register online, go to the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Having seen
.org,
this
I
a
think.
couple of times at the various D23 expos, I can tell you this is great.
It
And he
is.
not not do it very often.
No.
And
I have some video. Perhaps I'll link to one of the expos when he did.
and he just goes through all of not even just the hits, but basically all of the other.
With some backstory
Oh, yeah.
and commentary, which is just great. And, people.
That's
Yes.
right.
And people nowadays I don't know what kind of audience they're going to have, but if you're ever there for Expo, they go crazy when he does things like from Hunchback or whatever. And
Oh,
he's like,
yeah.
where were you when the movie came out?
Or like Newsies.
Or Newsies. Yeah.
I was there.
You were there. You were the original Newsies stan.
Saw it 3 times in the theater.
I
in
will
its
link
original release.
to this.
Oh, I was
You
going to
can-
say, because, for example, they do, part of, I'm getting that mixed with Part of Your World, but no, I meant Proud of Your Boy
Oh,
from Aladdin,
yes.
which was, that was the song that Howard Ashman had written as part of the treatment for Aladdin before he had even ever worked on Beauty and the Beast, which was actually released before Aladdin.
Yes.
And they were so heartbroken that song was taken out. In fact, that's actually what that image was for when they suggested to him that song be taken out. I think that actually might be something different, but
I do remember the story of how Howard really wanted that in there.
And they just couldn't make it work. But the fact, that's definitely going to be one that Alan Menken, he always makes sure to sing that one.
Well, guess who else is going to be joining him on this night?
Me?
No. Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Wait, what? That's awesome. That's like a twofer.
But as I mentioned, it is a fundraiser, but there's also a free ticket that you can get if you are not in a position to donate at this moment in time.
So cool, because he's done quite a lot of music for Mary Poppins Returns.
Exactly.
And,
it'll be interesting to see what
Hamilton, of course, and also Moana.
So, yeah, we've seen Alan Menken so many times. It'll be interesting to see Lin-Manuel added in. I will have a link to this on the accompanying blog post to go with the show, so you can check it out and register if you have not already. Just wanted to mention that because it kind of tied into what we were discussing.
That's great.
But again, thank you for joining us up the waterfall, and we hope you learned something new. Additionally, another reminder, our live show is officially starting. As I mentioned, it was supposed to be this past Monday, but we just got back from vacation.
Literally,
we had to record this podcast. We were kind of, a little crazy getting back to normal. School's about to start again here in Florida. It's crazy time. However, Monday, August 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time will be our first ever live show.
And we're going to do it like every Monday, right?
Every Monday.
So even if you're listening to this after that,
that's true.
Mondays.
Just wait for Monday and we'll be there.
Mondays at what time again?
7 p.m. Eastern.
Eastern Time, yes.
Yes. And it will be on the Zannaland Facebook page because that's the easiest way to broadcast to everyone.
Facebook.com/Zannaland.
Correct. So make sure you have liked the page and are following so you get a notification when we go live. We will certainly send out our little announcement closer in as well, but we hope everyone will join us. It's going to be
we'll have some fun, I think.
A little more casual. We're going to discuss trending topics versus historical topics, and a little bit of news, a little bit of fun. We'll do some
grab bag.
Yes, a grab bag.
Who knows what?
A goodie bag. I loved those as a child. Anyway, we hope you join us. We thank you for listening, as always, and thank you for joining us. Check out Waking Sleeping Beauty if you haven't.
You've got
drop
to
us a comment, like, subscribe, rate us, all of those wonderful things to keep us going. Thank you again for listening and joining us up the waterfall.
That's right. Anything's possible at Disneyland.
We're not doing a Disneyland episode.
I know, but it's the following line.
Okay.